wrestlers of today working in this land, this era, and how they would, get on, would probably be pretty terrible, when you think about it, because there is some showmanship here. There's no doubt about it, but it's very. It's secondary to what's actually going on in the ring. Like, I think it's all about the wrestling, and it's one thing I do appreciate about this style that we're watching is a lot of the things they're doing, Matt, are all purposely been done. Like, if he's working on his arm or his leg, there's a real reason to do it, or there's a reason to get out of the way, like the hold the way he does, which is something that's kind of missing sometimes. Like, you watch somebody, they'll like work on the leg, and then they let the wrestler get up again, and then I don't know, he starts working on his arm. You're thinking, why don't you go back to the leg again? Like, he just had that like sorted, like, make him sell the leg or whatever. But it is something that's missed these days, like the chemistry. Like, there seems to be very none of it. There's something I wouldn't have thought you'd see in the 50s just then. that leg scissor.
That was quite epic for that.
Yeah.
Also, like the way these days they say the kind of moves like they're doing here, they say they're wearing your opponent down, but in this time they genuinely are wearing you down. Can you imagine being like stuck in that move or a headlock or that for like how long they're in them, like 3 minutes at a time, and then like another 4 minutes, like a few minutes later? It really would wear you down.
Yeah. Yeah, so this to me, when I watch this, I kind of say to people, I say, what sort of style would you call that? This is my version of what a UFC WWE hybrid type of performance would actually look like. This is the closest I think you get to it, because obviously you can't do a UFC match, like, you can't make it look that real nowadays, because it just wouldn't have the wrestling theme at all. But this kind of style, this chain wrestling stuff, is probably the closest you'd ever get to it. Obviously, you're not going to see wrestlers bouncing off the turnbuckle and doing all those like crazy jumps for the sake of looking spectacular. I think what's important to recognise is all the moves they're pulling out. They're not doing flips and things like that for the sake of looking good. All the stuff they're doing are to look like they can actually take the other guy out. And they're going to do damage. I love that little flip up there from Lou Thesz. I thought he'd been knackered by then to pull that off. Buddy Rogers on a nice little arm lock there, straight into the. I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing. I didn't think I thought I was going to be. I'm not against old stuff, but sometimes you can watch the stuff and it's dated poorly, unfortunately. I can always have a respect for it, but when you watch it, it's like when you watch an old film. Sometimes old films stand the test of time, and sometimes old films, you watch them now and you're like, oh my god, like, it just doesn't stand up well over all the years. But this, I've got to say, I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. Like, even though I've not seen the end of this match yet, I'll say this is probably, if I was rating this, it'd probably be a total 5 stars. I don't know what you could do. I mean, as far as wrestling, this is the best you're probably going to see.
Yeah, they've totally got this down to a T, haven't they? They've definitely done this a few times before, and you can see it. I mean, everything, like I like the way that they do it. Like you said, everything has a reason, everything has a purpose, and they're not just out there just making stuff up on the fly here. This is well thought out, and they're doing it with a purpose. Every like move like this, even, like, you can see that it's really taking its toll. It will wear you down, and I just like that, because these days you get put in a headlock's nothing.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, they don't always mean anything, do they? In a lot of ways, as a while. So yeah, I do get what you're saying. And what's cool about it as well is when each guy dominates one another. They're not like, it's gone backwards and forwards more than I thought it would do. I love this like armbar thing going on. The fact that you couldn't break it there, but you see him like. But I just love the idea that they they really sell what they're doing. Like it's as much a credit to the guy that's been dominated that they're selling it well, for the guy that's actually putting the move on. And sometimes that's also missed today. Like when you watch the guy, did they sell it properly? Do they sell it after the moves come off? A lot of the times, no, they don't, and it does frustrate you sometimes that doesn't happen. I love the refs trying to like break this thing up now, like so like step in. You can see Buddy Rogers is doing that little Ric Flair walk there as well. Do you notice that? You can see where Flair got that from after he comes out of it.
It's really interesting watching like stuff like this because you can see like how people take their influences from them, and it gets passed down little bit by little bit. Because Ric Flair would look up to like these kind of people and think, I could use that in my kind of game. And now people are looking at Ric Flair thinking like that's something from Ric Flair's game that they would want to take, but originally it stems so far like further back.
Yeah, it's almost like passing down the DNA chain, isn't it? Like this is the DNA started from here, and there are still elements today that we see of this, which is incredible, really. Like all this far back, but it's still a major part of professional wrestling. Like this is definitely in its early stages, but at the same time you can't say that it wasn't at the forefront, because when you have that many eyes that were watching it back then, it certainly was in the forefront. These guys would have been mega stars, as I said. Like wrestlers back then were considered as big sports people. They weren't like it is today, where some people will mock the wrestlers, or it's all entertainment and that type of business. It's not the sort of John Cena stage here, let's put it that way, to get somebody over. Now we see like Lou Thesz getting back on top here. I think Lou Thesz as well, like it's worth pointing out, is that he was considered as the sort of straight wrestler. Like he didn't really do things to make you cheer him any more or less. He was just a very straight, dynamic type of wrestler that would just get on with the job, and I think that's what people ended up appreciating about him. But I mean, when you consider how long he portrayed that craft for, it's incredible to see that he stayed at this high level of wrestling for so long. Because it wouldn't have been easy. This is probably the first few bits where I've seen them come off the rope and do a drop kick there, flying drop kick, which is good.
Yeah,
I didn't think we'd see that.
Steady kind of pace, haven't they? Like these days it would be up and down all over the place, but this just going constant kind of speed. Oh,
whoa, flip there now, like nobody's business. Unbelievable. So there you go. That's a pin then for Buddy Rogers.
Yeah.
I think that's what we got there, which is good, because whenever I see that move, I go, wow, that is definitely a finisher. Like whenever I see that sit down powerbomb, that is like, come on, that would definitely knock somebody out on top of their head. Now unfortunately you can't use that move now. Like I think it's been pretty much banned in WWE, apart from the very few times. But obviously Jerry Lawler used to pull it out, Brett used to pull it out, like a lot of guys used to do that move. Unfortunately it just got moved. It was just another move, that's the problem. But that should, to me, if I was looking at wrestling as an outsider, I would say, yeah, that would actually hurt somebody, because how do you get out of that? Like, it's done so well, and I'm sure, and we know there have been many times where it's gone wrong. You just look at Stone Cold Steve Austin from '97 against Owen Hart, as a classic example of that, the power driver. There we go, the arguing with the referee. That's something we definitely don't miss today. That's always been there. I love it how the referee doesn't look as stupid as the ones we get today, though. That annoys me. If there's one thing I'd really like changed, it's not the referee's fault, it's just how that they're used sometimes. Like, they're turned the other way for about half a second, and yet they can't hear anything. Like, they go deaf, like when a chair shot's gone in, so they don't turn round, and then, of course, they turn around just on the moment. I always hate that kind of thing, and they use that way too much in this day and age. Buddy Rogers being quite mean now. Like, this is a real kind of heelish kind of stuff, like you're seeing him do now, like working him into that turnbuckle.
Yeah, now it feels like it's changed a bit pace. Now he looks a bit more urgency in the way he's wrestling here.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense because obviously he, from what I gather, I mean, I don't know if I've missed another pin, have I, Matt? That is the third. So I mean, if we're looking at it on terms like that, it makes sense for him to be like wrestling that style now, because why would he start chain wrestling when he's one up like that? That to me, there is logic in that. So if I'm watching a match, that makes much more sense to me. This is the way he's going to go. Like he's going to pull out these things now because he knows he's got the one up. And obviously doing the chain stuff, Lou Thesz was kind of almost getting the better of him sometimes.
You don't really want to go to round 3, do you? When you can just go too straight and then it's a shorter night for you.
Exactly. Again, another thing that's definitely a lot of our viewers will look at on this match, Matt, is the fact that the attires, like they were very, very similar back then. You know, forget the very outrageous things that we see today. You know, like your Boogeyman and Bray Wyatt entrance. That came much later. Probably in the 70s, that stuff started to come around with the likes of Kamala and all those type of gimmicks started to come into play. But here, this is total wrestling. It's I must point that out to everybody that other than the likes of, I think there was Gorgeous George, who wrestled a very strange attire. Yeah, but he was like the most bizarre thing anybody had ever seen. Actually, I will say one thing. There's a lot of references to someone like Gorgeous George to when you look at somebody like Goldust tried to portray. You look at that level of DNA of how that come down. There's definitely traces of that. And so this is now, like, I'm watching this. I love the way he's just dancing around that ring now, like trying to just not get involved, because he knows obviously there was a time limit on this, so he knows that he's winning this title if he holds on. And you're watching Lou Thesz just trying to get like the moves, the holds on to try and get this back. But I love the way Buddy Rogers was just like getting out of it, like just wasting some time. I mean, as well as that, Matt, like talk about like the length of time, and then here we go. That's like the first. That's got to be like the first combos of punches I've seen on both guys, where they've actually just done that, which is kind of cool. But in terms of like working a match this long, Matt, people always say this to me? They go, would a long match like these ones work into today's era? My answer to that, and I don't know what yours is, Matt, but is no. Just because I just think as fans we're just educated a different way. What do you think about that? Would this stuff ever return as long, lengthy matches like we're watching here?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it, really? Because I don't know when exactly they started phasing these out, but they had this whole kind of debate, didn't they, when it came to Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart? They were like, can we put on a 60-minute match? Yeah. Two men hold the attention of an audience for that.
Oh man!
Of course, they had their doubters, but when they went out there, they proved that it can be done. I think it can be done, but you really need the right two guys. You couldn't just have this with just anybody.
Yeah.
You'd have to have two high-level workers and people who are full of ideas and actually know how to sort of like think on their feet and actually keep the crowd entertained.
Yeah. I love this move that Lou Thesz has on him. I love the way they got into this. Like it looks like an armbar, but it's not. It's like it's what Brock uses like in the UFC. It's like a Kimura look that he's put on here, and he's done it backwards. But I love the way he got into it, like literally from like rolling over. It's just such a good thing. Good stuff to watch there. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think if you got the right two guys, it's perfect. Like if you had Kurt Angle, for instance, and I don't know, like a Brock Lesnar, that type of stuff, that would probably be fine. But I mean, some of the guys you think, I don't know if Dave Bautista and I don't know Ryback would be too good to watch for that long, for sure. But I think people's attention span is different to what it would have been accepted back here. I just think people, when they come to wrestling now, they just want fast, and there's so much more about the match than just the wrestling these days that it's hard. It would be so hard to re-educate everybody without the whole card doing it, because I think if you just had the two guys doing it, people would probably turn off. and not be interested as much, which is a real shame because there are still guys that could do this. There's no doubt about it, but I think the way the business has gone, it would be totally hard.